Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to talk about why being with an avoidant is so difficult. And I think that the main reason I want to go over this is because a lot of you guys in the comment section bring up how frustrated you are with your ex or your partner. And I think it's valid. And I want you guys to know that your frustrations are not coming out of nowhere. However, if you have an anxious or fearful attachment style, it can be even more frustrating. Some people who are anxious, preoccupied, I notice, believe that they're secure. And that can be a little triggering as well because you start realizing a lot of the anxiety that you're feeling in the relationship, sometimes it can be because you're secure, but the anxiety is a lot. Like, avoidance might make secure people feel more anxious, but more often than not, what you realize is actually you're not secure. It's just that you believe that you are. But actually, an avoidant is triggering you so extremely because you are pretty anxious. And normally, secure people, not all the time, they tend to not really be attracted to avoidance as strongly as anxious and fearful, simply because secure individuals are just much more heavily attracted to other secure individuals. And so while you might be secure, these things will still apply whether you're secure, fearful avoidant, or anxious preoccupied. I'm not dismissing and saying every person who says they're secure is anxious preoccupied. That's not what I'm saying. I just wanted to share that little piece of information because it was on my mind, and I'll forget if I don't say it. And some of you guys want information like that. The very first one is most people, won't understand your relationship dynamic, and it alienates you from helpful advice from so many other folks. A person who is with an avoidant, the relationship will look a little bit unique, especially at first. Later, when you get like long-term relationship or married, a lot of people can start, telling that the relationship is very strong. But in the beginning, they might not know. So they might give you advice that doesn't help with the attachment issue. They might just treat it as if someone who's uninterested in you, which is not actually the case. And so sometimes what can help if this is the issue, understand that people won't understand your dynamic and only talk to people who kind of do relate and understand attachment issues. But this one can be difficult, and I do understand. And people are not going to understand what's happening, but don't let that discourage you. Let yourself be the one to decide, is this relationship for you or not? If you don't want the relationship, that's different. But if your friend is telling you that you should leave or there are other people better, that might be true, but maybe you chose this relationship for a different reason, and that's up to you to decide. The next one is that this one is really challenging because you can see your partner is trying, but it's very, very slow, and waiting is incredibly difficult. And you do see progress. The tricky part about being with an avoidant is exactly this moment. Sometimes avoidants don't change, but a lot of them do, or at least some of them do. Remember, I'm also biased, as everyone is, but particularly so because I'm a therapist. So I'm going to see avoidants who at least have like 1%, even if they're forced by their mom or their wife or whoever. A lot of my patients are male, by the way. Doesn't always have to be the case. I have a couple that are female, but usually, even if they're forced or pressured by whoever, they still did it. And so there is definitely a part of them that wants to go to therapy. And so most patients I see have some desire to change, like some desire. Even if most of the time, some of them, they just come in because like you can really tell they don't want to be there, at least in the beginning. But there is progress being made later. But there's some percentage. And those are the ones that I'm kind of talking about, whether it's in therapy or outside of therapy. An avoidant that is making progress, even if it's really slow, the part that is frustrating is because you're sitting around waiting for the progress to increase, but you know that if you leave, there's a possibility that they may heal for somebody else, or they may never heal again because they were discouraged because you left. Not that it's your fault, but that kind of frustration and responsibility to some extent can be really overwhelming because it's not like you don't know. That's what puts you in a more uncomfortable position. They're changing a little bit, but is it ever going to turn into what you want? You don't know because there is something that you're looking at. And it makes it really hard because some people think you're like holding on to a string or whatever, but that's not necessarily what it is. The relationship is building. And a lot of marriages where one person is an avoidant or both, actually, avoidants, most of them are pretty loyal, at least the ones I've encountered in therapy, really, really, really loyal. And to the point where once they decide you're the person, unfortunately, even if you cheat on them, I'm not saying that you would, some of them are willing to make the sacrifice to still stay with you as long as you don't do it again. Even though they're really hurt and really broken about that, a lot of them just really don't want to lose their marriage once they really, really commit. And I think that this is why some people have a really hard time with this, because they know that avoidants are very loyal and attached to one particular person, and they put a lot of effort, even if it's really slow, to stay with that person. The next one is you feel like you can't express yourself, because avoidants are very hypersensitive to criticism, and your feelings about them feels like criticism. Because if you say something like, I feel like you don't understand how I feel and you're very detached, or I feel like you don't listen and your responses are very like one-noted. They don't have much depth. You're expressing how you feel. You said I feel, but they sometimes might feel like you're insulting them, and they get really hurt, they feel embarrassed, they get triggered, and they shut down. And so you feel like you have to walk on eggshells, because you kind of do. And interesting enough, on their side, they actually feel like they have to walk on eggshells too, which I know you guys won't believe me, but it's true, because they feel like anything they do that's naturally them, you're going to one day point it out. And I don't think you mean to, but this is happening at the same time, because while they're trying their hardest to say something to you, you say, hey, that's not good enough. It wasn't emotional enough. And they like tried their best, because normally they wouldn't even respond, for example. I know the bar's on the floor, the bar's like in the core of the earth, the depth of what the oceans, whatever it is, but I'm just telling you the truth. And this type of thing is where the conflict is, right? It's difficult being with an avoidant because you feel they're not trying hard enough, or you can't express yourself and they feel the same way. The next one is sometimes it feels like you have to heal yourself and you have to heal them. And there's a lot of validity to everything I'm saying, right? You have to heal yourself. You have to take accountability. You have to do everything, and you feel like they're doing nothing. They are doing stuff too. They're just less vocal about it, and it doesn't show up as often. A lot of their work, at least in the beginning, is inner and trust. Them being next to you is them doing work. It doesn't look like it, but they're usually the first levels of their emotional building and healing is trust. And so it's not active like yours, it's more passive, but eventually becomes more active. But the first steps is just trust for them. Yours is not that issue typically. It's you probably healing your reactions or being more patient. The next one is you actually, this is unfortunate, I see it sometimes with long-term marriages especially, you feel like you're becoming disinterested in them because too much interest causes them to react poorly. So you have trained yourself, and maybe they accidentally trained you, to show less emotion about how you feel about them. And it's becoming a reality. And that makes you sad, because you're mourning the relationship you had with them when you showed more love directly. This one's really unfortunate. And the really interesting part is, as the avoidant heals, they notice this is happening, and then they want you back the way you used to be. But it was not treated right. And so when you were emotional, they didn't treat you very right. So you put that away. And so they have to earn that trust. You can't bring that one back. You shouldn't. They should do it. Like, that's on them. And so if you really start feeling like this is happening to you, let it happen, because it wasn't you that did it. That's their responsibility. You can't do everything. That's not healthy. The next one is the last one, and it's probably the most difficult one. You genuinely love them, and they love you too. The barrier is childhood trauma, not the lack of love. This one makes it so difficult because you guys know that. If you guys didn't have attachment issues, or they didn't have attachment issues, you guys would be together and there'd be no issues. But it's not that simple, and that's the tricky part. But I do think love is really important. I think it's one of the fundamentals to healthy marriages, or satisfying marriages, which I think are healthy marriages. I know some people disagree with that. I don't think love is everything, but I think it's one of the strongest motivations, I thought. But let me go ahead and summarize, and we'll wrap it up. Most people won't understand your relationship dynamic. You feel like your partner is trying, but it's very slow, and sometimes you can get impatient. Very normal. You feel like you can't express yourself because your emotions can trigger them. You feel like you have to heal yourself and them because their healing in the beginning is passive. You feel like you're becoming disinterested in them because too much interest makes them react poorly. And you genuinely love each other, and the issues are attachment based. I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.